Have you ever watched someone clearly incompetent rise to a position of power and thought, how on earth did that happen? Maybe it was that manager who couldn't organize a lunch order but somehow got promoted again. Or perhaps it was that politician whose every word made you cringe, yet they kept winning elections. Your gut told you something was wrong with the system. Your intuition whispered that there must be some explanation. What if I told you there is a hidden law of human nature, a psychological principle so counterintuitive yet so powerful that it explains why the least qualified people often end up in charge? And what if understanding this law could not only make sense of the madness around you, but potentially change how you approach your own path to influence? In 1969, a psychologist named Lawrence Peter published a book that would illuminate a fundamental flaw in how our hierarchies function. He called it the Peter Principle, the idea that people in organizations rise to their level of incompetence. But this was just scratching the surface of something far more pervasive, something woven into the very fabric of human psychology. Long before Peter's observations, Nietzsche had glimpsed this phenomenon. He wrote of men who, lacking the capacity for real power, compensate with an insatiable hunger for dominance. And nearly 2 millennia earlier, Seneca observed how those most desperate for control were often those least suited to wield it. What these thinkers were circling, what we'll explore today, is not just a quirk of corporate America or modern politics. It's a psychological truth that stretches across time and cultures, a hidden law that explains why power and competence so rarely travel together. The Journey 1. The Confidence Paradox. Picture this, a university study room late at night. 2 students are preparing for tomorrow's exam. Michael has been studying for weeks. He knows the material deeply, understands its nuances, recognizes its complexities, and because he understands so thoroughly, he's acutely aware of all he doesn't know. Doubt flickers at the edges of his confidence. Sitting across from him is James. James started studying yesterday. He's skimmed the textbook, memorized a few key phrases. He understands the material superficially, just enough to feel like he's mastered it. He has no idea how much he doesn't know. When asked how he'll do on the exam, James says, without hesitation, "I'll ace it." This is our first insight into the hidden law. Those who lack competence often overflow with confidence. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect, the cognitive bias that leads people with limited knowledge to overestimate their competence. But it goes deeper than just cognitive error. This misplaced confidence creates a powerful social advantage. We're drawn to certainty. In a world of complexity and doubt, someone who projects absolute confidence feels like a safe harbor. Their unwavering belief in themselves bypasses our rational assessment. Their certainty feels like competence, even when it's merely the absence of self-awareness. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a politician say, "This is incredibly complex, and I'm not entirely sure what the best approach is"? Instead, they declare simple solutions to impossibly complex problems, and millions nod along, comforted by the illusion of certainty. Meanwhile, those with genuine expertise, those who understand the true complexity of the challenges we face, often speak in careful, qualified language. They acknowledge uncertainty, weigh competing perspectives, admit the limitations of their knowledge, and in doing so, they often appear weaker, less decisive, less leader-like to those seeking the comfort of certainty. This confidence paradox doesn't just explain individual success. It helps us understand why entire societies sometimes elevate the most simplistic thinkers to positions of greatest influence. The fool, untroubled by doubt, speaks with a conviction the wise cannot honestly muster. 2. The visibility trap. Let me take you to ancient Athens, where Socrates wandered the agora questioning those who claimed to know what they did not. His method was simple. Engage those who proclaimed certainty, ask probing questions, reveal the gaps in their understanding. This approach made him few friends among the powerful. When put on trial, he famously declared, "I am wiser than this man, for neither of us really knows anything beautiful and good, but this man thinks he knows something when he does not, whereas I, as I do not know anything, do not think I do either." Socrates understood what many miss. True wisdom begins with recognizing the boundaries of your knowledge. But here's where our hidden law reveals itself again. Acknowledging what you don't know requires stepping back, reflecting, questioning. These are internal processes, invisible to others. Meanwhile, bold declarations, confident assertions, and ambitious promises are highly visible. They capture attention, inspire followers, generate excitement. Consider two team members pitching ideas in a meeting. The first says, "I've been researching this problem for months. There are several approaches we could take, each with its own trade-offs. I think approach A is promising, but we should test it carefully." The second declares, "I've figured it out. My solution will double our results in 6 months. Guaranteed." Which one gets the green light? Which one gets promoted? Which one eventually runs the company? The visibility trap explains why those who oversimplify complex realities, who reduce nuanced problems to catchy solutions, often rise faster than those who engage honestly with complexity. The person quietly building genuine competence is outshined by the person loudly claiming it. And here's the cruel twist. Once someone rises to power through the visibility of their confidence rather than the substance of their competence, they're incentivized to maintain that illusion. Admitting uncertainty becomes even more threatening when your position depends on the perception of expertise. So, the cycle perpetuates. The least qualified continue rising, carried upward by visible confidence rather than invisible competence. 3. The empathy barrier. There's a moment in Shakespeare's King Lear where the aging king, having given away his power and been betrayed, finds himself caught in a terrible storm. For the first time, he thinks of others suffering as he now suffers. "Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides defend you from seasons such as these?" It's a moment of profound realization that he had never truly considered the suffering of others until he experienced it himself. And in this revelation lies another dimension of our hidden law. Those most ruthless in pursuing power are often those least equipped to use it wisely. The very qualities that help someone seize power, sharp elbows, relentless self-promotion, prioritizing personal advancement, are precisely the qualities that make them dangerous once they have it. The skills of obtaining power are not the skills of wielding it responsibly. True leadership requires empathy, the ability to understand others' needs, to feel their pain, to put yourself in their shoes. But empathy takes time. It slows you down. It complicates decision-making. It makes you question whether what benefits you will harm others. Those with deep empathy often hesitate to seek power, knowing its weight and responsibility. They see leadership as service rather than privilege. Meanwhile, those unburdened by such concerns race ahead, climbing over others without a second thought. This empathy barrier creates a terrible selection effect in our hierarchies. Those most eager for control are often those we should least trust with it. The person who wants nothing more than to be CEO might be precisely the person who shouldn't be. The politician who has dreamed of nothing but the presidency since childhood might be the last person who should hold it. And so, like water flowing downhill, power tends to collect in the hands of those least equipped to use it wisely, those who desire it most intensely, precisely because they don't comprehend its true purpose. The simplicity virus. In 1721, A smallpox epidemic ravaged Boston. The city's leading physician, Dr. Zabdiel Boylston, proposed a radical solution: deliberately infect healthy people with small amounts of the virus to trigger immunity. His approach was based on careful observation and emerging science. The response: public outrage, death threats, a bomb thrown through his window. Meanwhile, other physicians offered simpler explanations and remedies: evil vapors, bloodletting, prayer. These appealed to common understanding and required no uncomfortable new thinking. Boylston's approach, though ultimately proven correct, fell victim to what I call the simplicity virus, our fourth insight into the hidden law of fools in power. Complex truths lose to simple falsehoods. Human minds crave simplicity. We're drawn to explanations that are easy to understand, memorable, and emotionally satisfying, even when they're wrong. We prefer clear villains to complex systems, simple solutions to multifaceted problems. This cognitive preference creates another advantage for the unqualified. Those with deep understanding know that significant problems rarely have simple solutions. They speak in paragraphs when audiences want sound bites. They offer nuance when people crave certainty. Meanwhile, those with superficial understanding naturally communicate in the simple, absolute terms that our minds find irresistible. Their explanations spread not because they're right, but because they're easy to understand and repeat. Their solutions gain support not because they'll work, but because they're comforting to imagine. Think of how this plays out in the workplace. The manager who reduces a complex business challenge to "we just need to work harder" or "we need to innovate more" sounds decisive. The one who says, "this is a multifaceted problem involving market dynamics, organizational culture, and technological constraints that will require careful analysis and a nuanced approach," sounds weak, hesitant, perhaps even incompetent. Or consider how it manifests in public discourse. During economic downturns, the political leader who promises "I'll create jobs by cutting taxes" or "I'll protect jobs by restricting trade" offers mental comfort food, easy to digest, immediately satisfying. The economist who explains the complex interplay of monetary policy, global trade patterns, technological disruption, and demographic shifts, who admits there are no quick fixes, may be right, but will rarely be popular. The tragedy is that complex problems cannot be solved with simple solutions. When we elevate leaders who offer easy answers, we doom ourselves to cycles of failure and disappointment. Yet we keep doing it, keep falling for the same comforting simplicity, like addicts returning to a drug we know is harmful. The simplicity virus explains why complex expertise so often loses in the public square, not because it's wrong, but because it demands more cognitive effort than most are willing to expend. And it explains why those offering childishly simple solutions to adult-sized problems so often capture imagination, loyalty, and ultimately, power. The feedback illusion. Let me tell you about an experiment conducted at a major tech company in 2019. Two product teams were given identical challenges: create a new feature that would increase user engagement. Team A was led by a manager known for listening, incorporating feedback, and admitting uncertainty. Team B was led by a manager who projected unwavering confidence and rarely changed course based on input. Both teams completed their projects. When senior leadership evaluated the results, something fascinating happened. Even though Team A's feature performed better in actual user testing, leadership perceived Team B's project more favorably. Why? Because Team B's leader had never wavered, had never admitted doubt, had maintained an aura of absolute certainty throughout. This brings us to our fifth insight into the hidden law: systems that reward confidence over correctness create feedback loops that entrench incompetence. When we promote people based on how certain they seem, rather than how accurate they are, we create a devastating feedback loop. Those who express unjustified confidence get rewarded. This reinforces their belief in their own brilliance. They become even more confident, even less likely to question themselves or learn from others. Meanwhile, those who calibrate their confidence to match reality, who admit uncertainty when appropriate, get passed over. Their intellectual honesty becomes a professional liability. Many eventually learn to hide their doubts and project false certainty, further corrupting the information environment. Over time, this feedback illusion transforms organizations and societies. Decision-making processes that should be about finding truth become exercises in performance and persuasion. Meetings become stages where the most confident, not the most correct, win the day. Elections become contests of conviction rather than competence. And here's the most insidious part. Once incompetent leadership is established, it tends to replicate itself. People in power naturally favor those who think like them, who reinforce their worldview. A CEO who rose through charisma rather than capability will naturally promote others who display the same traits. A political leader who succeeded through simplistic messaging will elevate advisors who offer more of the same. Through this mechanism, the hidden law doesn't just put individual fools in power, it creates entire ecosystems of incompetence, self-sustaining structures where being right matters less than appearing certain, where challenging comfortable falsehoods becomes career suicide. Think about the last time you sat in a meeting where everyone nodded along with an obviously flawed idea because it came from someone in authority. That moment, that silence, is the feedback illusion at work. And every time we participate in it, we strengthen the hidden law's hold on our institutions. Here we arrive at the heart of our hidden law, the revelation that ties together everything we've explored. In human systems unrestrained by wise design, incompetence rises to power not despite itself, but because of itself. The very qualities that make someone incompetent for leadership: overconfidence unchecked by self-awareness, self-promotion unconstrained by humility, simplistic thinking unburdened by nuance, ambition unchecked by empathy, create advantages in the competition for power. This is not a conspiracy. It's not the product of malevolent design. It's an emergent property of human psychology and social dynamics, a kind of gravitational force that, unless actively counterbalanced, pulls our hierarchies toward dysfunction. The Peter Principle observed that people rise to their level of incompetence, but our hidden law goes further. Systems that select for confidence over competence, visibility over value, simplicity over truth, and ambition over wisdom actively elevate incompetence to the highest levels of authority. This is why history shows us empire after empire, institution after institution, company after company undermined from within by the poor decisions of its own leadership. It's why organizations that begin with vision and purpose so often calcify into self-perpetuating bureaucracies that protect mediocrity rather than nurture excellence. And most importantly, it's why the mere act of recognizing this pattern, of seeing the hidden law at work, is itself revolutionary, because once seen, it cannot be unseen, and once understood, it can be resisted. So how do we resist this hidden law? How do we create systems that elevate genuine wisdom rather than its mere appearance? First, we must learn to distrust our intuitive responses to confidence. The next time someone's certainty impresses you, pause and ask, is this the confidence of expertise or the confidence of ignorance? Does this person acknowledge what they don't know or claim to have all the answers? Second, recognize that the most qualified people for leadership often don't seek it, at least not aggressively. Sometimes the best candidates need to be convinced, need to be drawn forward rather than pushing themselves ahead. In your community, your workplace, your political system, look for those who lead through service rather than self-promotion. Third, practice what I call reverse status signaling. In meetings and conversations, try publicly saying, "I don't know," or "I was wrong," or "I need help understanding this." When people with authority model intellectual humility, it creates psychological safety for everyone to prioritize truth over appearance. One leader willing to be vulnerable can transform an entire culture. Fourth, create structured devil's advocacy. In ancient Rome, when they were considering someone for sainthood, they appointed a devil's advocate, someone whose job was to make the strongest possible case against canonization. Similarly, organizations can formalize the role of disagreement. Assign someone to challenge the prevailing view, to look for flaws in the plan everyone loves. Rotate this role so it doesn't become adversarial. And perhaps most importantly, we must embrace complexity in our thinking, in our communication, in our approach to problems. We must resist the allure of simplistic explanations and quick fixes, even when they comfort us. We must find the courage to say, "I don't know," or "It's complicated," when that's the truth. We must learn to appreciate leaders who speak in shades of grey rather than black and white. Because here's the beautiful truth. Once you understand the hidden law, you gain power over it. Once you see how confidence can mask incompetence, how simplicity can disguise inadequacy, you become less susceptible to their pull. You start recognizing genuine wisdom even when it doesn't announce itself with fanfare. You start valuing leaders who question themselves, who evolve their thinking, who admit their mistakes. As we near the end of our exploration, I wonder, where have you seen this hidden law at work in your own life? What structures or systems have you encountered that select for confidence over competence, for simplicity over truth? Perhaps you've been passed over for opportunities because you weren't the loudest voice in the room. Or maybe you've caught yourself being swayed by someone's conviction rather than the substance of their ideas. Understanding this hidden law doesn't mean giving in to cynicism. It means developing the wisdom to see beyond appearances, to value substance over style, to recognize true competence even when it doesn't announce itself with fanfare. In our next video, we'll explore the counterintuitive truth about great leaders, why the most effective ones often feel the least certain of their abilities, and how this paradox of leadership reveals something profound about human potential. Until then, remember, the hidden law works in darkness. By bringing it into the light, we've already begun to break its power.